Welcome, I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. You're watching Head to Head. World Bank expects Ukrainian economy to grow by 3.5% in 2018. That is under several conditions. Implementing reforms that have been announced earlier is one of them. To have a more detailed talk on the topic, we're joined in the studio today by Maksim Prazdnikov. He is a Ukrainian economist. Hello, and thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting.
All right, so the forecast of the World Bank, which I just said states growth in Ukrainian economy by 3.5%. Is it a good thing?
Well, definitely any kind of a growth is a good thing, for sure. But at the same time, I would say that it's not a kind of new news. They already announced early January the same numbers, actually. So they just reconfirmed this 3.5 growth. If you compare it with average growth with world economy, you will see that it's pretty equal with those numbers which are forecasted in general for the world. After economic forum in Davos, it was reconsidered, and the world IMF actually announced that the total growth of economy for the worldwide, it will be 3.5, exactly the same numbers as we expect for Ukraine. While at the same time, they said that for countries which are in the process of development, and
which is
Ukraine, as for sure, they expected 4.7, which is higher, while for the countries,
than the average.
While for mature country, their expectation was 2.3, 2.5. So on one hand, we are growing exactly like the rest of the world. On the other hand, we are not growing as fast as majority of the countries which are on the way of development of their economy. And that is actually just putting us in a place where we are standing where all the world is. So our economy dropped a lot last 5 years, within the last several years, 4 or 5 years.
Wait, if I'm not mistaken, last year the growth of the Ukrainian economy consisted of 2.5%.
2.5
exactly.
After consideration,
so there still was a growth.
Previously was even lower. Yeah, the first numbers was 2.2, and then it was reconsidered like 2.5.
All right.
But at the same time, if you take a look, for example, for the drop, we have an extremely deep dive. Our drop was something like 15%. So
that's a lot.
We are really trying to compensate those numbers which we missed 4 or 5 years ago. And actually, we are only on the way to be back on track. And the growth 3.5, yes, definitely it's better than minus 15. But it's far not the best numbers. And we should expect definitely the growth on the level 4 or 5% to be in the
How do we
country
reach
of
that level of 4 or 5%, the level the developed countries already have?
Well, we have almost all necessary conditions actually for that. But at the same time, I fully agree with both World Bank and IMF, who is saying that unless there will be certain kind of reforms, we even could say that 3.5 is a dream for us, because we have the expectation actually of World Bank is that if there is no reforms, then the growth will be even lower. Then it should be something like 1.5 up to 2% maximum. As for the reforms, definitely it was already discussed many, many times, and it's actually the same. They have both common positions, IMF and World Bank. The very first thing, it's about anti-corruption court, and in general about reformation of a court system in Ukraine, because this is the majority reason most of investors are not sure about investing in Ukraine.
Because the procedure is not transparent enough.
Absolutely. It's not transparent, and the ownership is not protected in the proper way. So you can own some factory or whatever, but it doesn't give you a guarantee that one day somebody will come and trade it. Yeah, absolutely. This is the story. This is number one. Second, it's definitely market of the land. It's also a kind of guarantee that your property will be not taken from you. Third one, it's reformation of state banks. And finally, it's privatization of state-owned enterprises. Actually, last year, our Verkhovna Rada voted for the new law about regulation of privatization of state-owned enterprises. And it was a very positive sign for all international financial organizations, as well for all investors. But one thing is to vote for something. The second point is implementation of it, how it will work.
Exactly.
And we have no positive sign that it will be implemented right now. So we have a law in place, but we are not sure how it will be operated by state.
Or how much time is going to take, for that matter, to implement?
I would say that this year is pretty crucial one. And most of investors, they will see what is going on. Either it's like fake law, it's not real one, it's just voted to show our investors that we are doing something, or it's a real step for some changes with ownership, with privatization, and how this law actually and all the process will work. Either it will stay like the most of, well, as it used to be in previous year. If you remember, most of state-owned enterprises, everybody knows who will be the winner of this actual auction and who will be the owner of these enterprises in nearest future. Nowadays, it's considered that it will be changed, and the real privatization will be a kind of a fight between different companies who will try to give their best price offer for this company or this private of their state-owned enterprises. We will see.
All right, coming back to the IMF and its head, Christine Lagarde, who just said that the world economy is under threat. What did she mean by that? Could you comment?
Well, you know, right now we are living in a very interesting time, and it's a time of a very high volatility. What we see is a potential war between United States and China, and everybody hopes that it will not take place actually, because it's already several steps. It's not a final steps, it's just announcement of the steps about certain tariffs for China products, and China on their side announced some potential tariffs on United States goods, and you can already see how was impact on financial markets. Just to give you an idea, for example, U.S. stock market dropped more than 10 or up to 15% within just a few weeks, and this is one of the worst drop for several years in a row.
Well, in comparison to the Russian stock market, which dropped dramatically since December 2016, that's nothing.
Yeah, but this is the same story. It's about certain sanctions from United States. And if I'm not mistaken, the Russian stock market dropped more than 20% in one day.
Yeah.
Just it was not like in the United States and China, because it was step by step. It was 2, 3, 5% per day, but it was a long-term process.
Yeah, in Russia it was
if we can consider it's
rapid
like 2 weeks long-term process. In case of Russia, absolutely, it was just a huge drop, and it was 20% as a total market. And for some companies, for example, Rusal, it was 50%. And
37 actually.
Yeah,
37.
and this is the same story that several Russian oligarchs lost, I don't know, 20-30% of their wealth just in one day. Definitely, it's about more or less a kind of theoretical discussion, because they didn't lose their billions in the pure cash. It's just
that's true.
It's
but
just a drop
again,
of the value of their company.
Again, speaking of which, do the sanctions imposed by the U.S. on Russia and its oligarchs, do they have any effect on the Russian economy, for that matter?
Definitely.
Which one?
Again, this is. The one should understand that these sanctions, it's just a very first step. And nobody knows what will be the second, the third one, etc., etc.
Well, hopefully they're going to strengthen them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was already commented today that United States announced that they will stop their kind of soft attitude to Russia, and they're gonna put a little bit more even pressure on Russia after all this happened within the last, I don't know, several weeks. And those companies that were affected with the last sanctions, it's mainly company connected with one Russian guy, with Deripaska, Mr. Deripaska.
Yeah, who's a close ally to Mr. Putin.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was not a sanctions as for some other companies like Gazprom or whatever. Of course, personal sanctions, for example, for Miller, for Mr. Miller, yeah, it was implemented, but it was a personal sanction. It was not a sanctions against the company. So it was like a first shoot, and it was kind of a shoot that should show everyone that nobody is safe. And if Russia continues doing what they're doing right now, definitely their sanctions will be implemented against other companies, and there is a chance that it will be even stronger sanctions.
Yeah, but okay, but can that influence the Russian economy? Could it drop because of that?
It is actually influence, because of the fact that it's not only sanctions against one company. It also announced that all the companies that will have joint business with this company or will deal with their stocks
a target,
could be also a target, yes. So it means that for Russian companies it will be very difficult to get some finances, to get some loans, to get some bank support. And it means that in the very best case they can get some kind of compensation actually from Russian banks and Russian government. And definitely it means more taxes and more spending for supporting their own companies, and definitely less spending for some social program, less spending definitely for Russian army, and etc., etc.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and clarifying that all for us. That was Maksim Prazdnikov. He is a Ukrainian economist. Thank you so much for staying with UATV. Stay tuned.